how we got over, how we got over, oh my Lord. You know my soul look back and wonder how we got over. Gee's Bend, Alabama is surrounded on a three-sided area by a dramatic U-turn in the Alabama River. And it has approximately 700 residents there who are slave descendants. Joseph G. purchased the land in 1845, but debts caused him to lose it, and his descendants couldn't keep it, and they forfeited the property and 101 slaves to a relative named Mark H. Petway. Now, if you look at some of the paintings here and everything, the name Petway is a slave name. But there were so many of them, they had to put middle names in between. Like if somebody's name was Missouri or something like that, they would have to put a middle name in there to distinguish one family from the other so that they wouldn't marry first cousins. Okay? Now, in other culture, in the days of slavery, the white slave owners wanted to mate with first cousins so they could keep the money, you know, in the family. But this was not a practice done, you know, at Gee's Bend during the slave history there. Now, in 1890, a new landowner, Adrian Vandegraff, of Tuscaloosa, had the intention to replace all of the black slaves with white farmers. But a Camden merchant named E.O. Renz advanced the residents money to pay their rent to Mr. Vandegraff, the landlords. Now, they were to repay rents when the price of cotton rose. But Mr. Renz died in 1932, and his widow foreclosed on the informal loans by sending agents to Gee's Bend to take away any possessions, farming equipment, or livestock that was not nailed down. And in the play that I participated in at Rockford University through Artist Ensemble, in 2012, Elizabeth Gregory Wilder wrote a wonderful, wonderful play, and she did it in 3 different segments where the girls were teenagers, and then they were young adults, and then they became seniors. But this is her account of what Mrs. Renz did. This is Elizabeth Gregory Wilder's account of what Mrs. Renz did to those people, you know, when her husband died. They didn't give us no warning, nothing. Mr. Renz over in Camden was doing the furnishing for us, but then Mr. Renz dies and his widow decides she wanted all back. I came running down the road. Mama, they coming. They got wagons. They taking everything. Mama standing there on the porch, big old butcher knife in her hand. She sent the little children into the house, and she say, Nella, take this knife. Want you to go out to the barn and kill them 2 hogs. The babies too. Take the knife and slit their throats. They ain't taking my pigs. And I love them baby pigs. You big now. Go on. All the way down the road, people standing on their porches and watching as the men ride through. Wasn't long before a man come with his wagon Don't even speak. Just start taking. Took Mama's milk cow that was out in the yard, the shovels, and the buckets. He just about to leave when he hear them pigs back in the barn. They screaming something terrible. He looks to Mama, standing there stone-faced, and he smiles. He take off toward the barn, but then the screaming stops. And here I come, covered in them pigs' blood. He got one look at me and he take off out of there. About that time, Daddy come running in from the field. But it was too late. He chased after that man until he fell down in the dirt. Only time I ever seen my daddy cry. That man was broke down. Mama roasting pigs, but I couldn't eat. Can't hardly stand the smell of pork. I do what Mama say, but it ain't right. That is the writing of Miss Elizabeth Gregory Wilder. The 1930s brought Gee's Bend to national attention by Renwick Kennedy, a white pastor in Camden who wrote, "Gee's Bend is an Alabama Africa. There is no more concentrated and racially exclusive Negro population in any rural community in the South than Gee's Bend. We've been through trials. We've been through trials and tribulations. But our souls look back and wonder how we got over, how we got over, how we got over, oh my Lord. You know my soul look back and wonder how we got over. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal program identified Wilcox County, the poorest county in America, and chose the Gee's Bend community as their poster child. The Roosevelt homes offered the residents low-interest loans and mortgages, which were mostly paid off in full because they allowed that to happen. Many residents continue to live in those Roosevelt homes till today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached in Gee's Bend in March of 1965, and many women joined the marches, but the men stayed behind to work in the fields. After King's visit, the sheriff discontinued the Alabama Ferry, the Alabama River Ferry service, which transported the residents to and from the mainland. It was not continued again until 2006. So from 1965 to 2006, those residents had to find another way to get to Camden and some of those other places. And I had the opportunity when I went to Gee's Bend in 2013 to ride that ferry. You know, the car's on the ferry, and I talked to some people tonight who had that experience as well. And you go into Camden, and it's just a really little small town. And I had the opportunity also to see where the Freedom Quilting Bee took place. And I saw the shop where they made the quilts, where you could pick out your own swatches, and they would make a quilt, you know, personally for you. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. Look like a band of Israelites. God gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. And when I sing this song for children, talking about the secret message songs, in this song, during the days of the Underground Railroad, this song was used as letting people know that the route for escape was going to be through water. And the God's gonna trouble the water part of it meant the paddle rollers. If they heard the horse hooves and the dogs barking, they would trouble the water. So I think that they referred to, the Gee's Bend people were thinking about the sheriff and his meanness, you know, when they sang this song about him troubling the waters and not allowing them for all those years to use that ferry. In the 1960s, the quilts of Gee's Bend caught the attention of outsiders through Father Francis X. Walter, an Episcopal priest who purchased several quilts to be sold at auction in New York City for the financial benefit of the women of Gee's Bend. In 1966, the founding of the Freedom Quilting Bee created standardized quilts for department store chains, as well as craft items such as aprons and pot holders. From 1972 to the mid-1980s, the Freedom Quilting Bee produced over 100,000 corduroy pillow covers sold through Sears and Roebuck catalogs. 100,000. And in September of 2002, Houston's Museum of Fine Arts premiered an exhibit, The Quilts of Gee's Bend, you know, like the book there, and this small community had again come to the nation's attention. We've come a long way, Lord. We come a long way. We come a long way, Lord. We come a long way. We come a long way, Lord. We come a long way. We come through the storm. We come through the rain, knowing that the Lord's gonna make a way. We come a long way, Lord. We come a long way. Minzy Lee Petway says, ought not two quilts ever be the same? You might use exactly the same materials, but you would do it different. A lot of people make quilts just for your bed, for you to keep you warm, but it's more. It represents safekeeping, beauty, and family history. Quilting goes back several generations. A girl's first quilt was something of a coming-of-age ritual inducting her into womanhood, much like in the Hispanic community, the quinceañera, and in the Jewish community, you have your bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah, all of that. Well, that was their, in Gee's Bend, that was their coming of age for their daughters, for their young women, is that you had to make your first quilt, whether you made it for your marriage bed or what, but quilting was a real necessity in those families, and they passed this art along, you know, to their daughters. Quilting is a time to talk about family, the future, past or present, a bonding between family and friends and community. Quilting expresses rituals of life along with shelter. The quilt safeguards the human body during the greatest vulnerability, sleep. Now, in those those houses before the Roosevelt houses came, they were log, where there were gaps. It was just made out of just wood, but there was always gaps. So in the wintertime, they used old magazines and newspapers to stuff in those cracks. But they also would hang the quilts up over those cracks to keep the wind out. But then in the summertime, they took them down so that they could let the air in. So quilts were always functional. And if you have had an opportunity to walk around and see the paintings here, of the artwork, you see that some people say they are the 27th child in a family. And it was not unusual for these families to have loads and loads of children. So the quilts, the number of quilts you had in your home depended on the number of children that you had. And so, and I wanted to ask so much, did that come from one mother? You know, I mean, does that one mother, but then I'd be getting into somebody's business, so. So anyway, but that first group back there, I read that, and he is the 7th child of 27 children, and they did have lots and lots of children during that time. So the quilting materials would be old work clothes, found materials, very much like the artwork in the museum. They found these materials and they created it into some form of art. And that's what they did with that. They old work clothes and scraps from any and everywhere. And Mary Lee Bendoff says, I like to work with old clothes because it's got love in it. You feel the presence of the person who used to wear them. It has spirit in them. And I wanted to share something with you that has my spirit in this, and my mother's and my sister's. We had, my best friend's mother was a seamstress. And where I grew up in El Dorado, Arkansas, we could not try on clothes or shoes or anything in the stores because it was against the law. You know, it was the South. So therefore, we got a lot of our clothes made. And so her name was Miss Veda. Miss Veda would give Mama the scraps, and she would make quilt toppers. So my sister Annie gave me this quilt topper after my mother passed away. And these are my dresses, my sister Christine's dresses, and my mother's dresses, because we were the youngest girls in the family. So these are my dresses, my mother's dresses, and my sister Christine's dresses, and I had the person who finished it for me to call it Mama's quilt. So that's that spirit that's in there. When I look at this, my sister Christine is no longer here, my mother is no longer here, but I can feel their spirit when I am near, you know, this quilt. And so I understand exactly what Miss Bendoff is saying in here about the, you know, the spirit in these quilts. And sometimes quilts are memorials. Missouri Petway declared after her husband's passing, I'm going to take his work clothes, shape them into a quilt, and remember him and cover up under it for love. And I think you'll see one of the, in there of the denim coveralls, those were husbands or, you know, their work clothes put after they were worn out and put it into a quilt. The inspiration for doing these quilts came from everywhere. The environment, some of them say that they would be walking from the fields and they look at the sky or look at the trees and something, and they would jot something down that would give them an idea for making a quilt. Imagination, just, you know, whatever it comes to mind from other families, their dreams and hopes, and they never used any patterns. Now, I could give Miss Veda, the seamstress from Arkansas, I could give her a picture of a dress that I wanted, and she could make it without getting a pattern. I can't remember now who makes it. McCall's, was it? Yeah, and all of that. She didn't need any of that. She would just could see it, and she could cut it out, and she could make it. I mean, what a talent! What a talent! So since there were no museums in G's Bend, what they did, they went from house to house and looked at the quilts of the other people, and that gave them ideas. And nobody minded being copied because it was still not going to be exactly alike. It's still not going to be exactly alike. And I have a quilt that a dear friend of mine from church made for me, and this is called, she said she calls it gentleman's necktie. And I'm sure that there are a lot of these out there, but I bet you there's no one that is a duplicate, you know, for this. And her name is Virgie Jackson, and she's 94 years old. And she gave me this for my birthday, you know, last year. And she explained to me about the gentleman's necktie, you know, what it was called, and they were called all different kinds of things. And I appreciated that because you know, like one thing, I love art, but all of my art looks like lines and circles or little stick people or something like that, you know. But I appreciate it, and I am so, you know, when I look at this, I love it. I absolutely love it. And sewing, you know, I have an idea of how I want something to look, but I don't sew either. So I respect everybody who has that kind of talent. I really respect it. Quilts as an African-American art, just like the music, the quilts are just like the art that we see in this museum. And Jesse Jackson said of his grandmother, he was speaking at a convention one time, he said, with sturdy hands and a strong cord, she'd sew the materials together in a quilt, a thing of beauty and power and culture. So, you know, I'm sure that you guys have stories about different things in your families that are handed down and all of that. All these traditions are so precious. And the thing I worry about is that when the kids that young, they don't see the value in, you know, passing something down and knowing how precious it is. They see it as junk. And there are treasures. So I'm hoping that some kind of way that we can instill in them that these are precious, these are treasures, that it's not just junk that you're supposed to get rid of, you know. It's like the homes right now in G's Bend. When those kids have moved away to New York and different big towns and stuff like that, all they want to know when they come back is, if I sell this house, how much am I going to get for it? Not preserve it for their children and their grandchildren or whatever like that, but they want to know how much they can get, you know, for it. This was mentioned here, and we understand that, you know, that's how we know somebody like that. Okay, we really do know somebody like that. Many elements of African American art were imported directly from African traditions that slaves in America kept alive and passed down to their children. Now, the textile makers in many, many parts of Africa in the beginning were male. But when they came to America, this became a female thing, a woman thing, where they took over the sewing and making of textiles and everything like that. But now, when you go to parts of Africa, you will find that women are making textiles, you know, and they're sewing and they're making their own money, but that wasn't the case way back in the day. Slave women channeled their despair into patterns of which they could be proud, in which they found fulfillment and a sense of self-worth. Although slavery denied these women their freedom, it did not diminish their creative talent and artistic genius. Now I'm going to get to the quilt making and music, and some of these terms you may or may not, you know if you're not a musician, but you'll understand if you look at the artwork in this museum and you see all these found things that they put together. They had no idea what it was going to end up being. They had no creative visualization by seeing it finished at the end. They just started putting things together, and then it became whatever it became. Okay? And that's how improvisation in music is. That's how this quilting is. That's how much of this artwork is. And they basically had a space when they sat on porches and in their houses and stuff like that. The quilt makers experienced a praise space. And if you know anything about African American history, and in the days when slaves were not allowed to worship in their own way, they would go way up in the woods at night, and they would praise. But then, as it got later, they had something called praise houses. And these little houses, I mean, it would just be, you could just hear the stomping and the hand clapping and stuff. There were no instruments or anything like that. And those were the praise houses. So these women remembered that. And so as they'd sit on their porch alone, they would be moaning, singing, humming and everything like that. And they would create, and working alone, a quilt maker may moan or sing, reflecting on our relationship with God. Working in groups, quilt makers also sing hymns and testify. And if you don't know what testifying means, it just means that you give praise to the things that God has done for you, and you are saying thank you. That's your praise. That's your praise, and yes, you're testifying, bearing witness for each other as their needles pierce cloth. One quilt maker says, when I make a quilt, I be praying and asking the Lord to help me do the work I do. Lord, I want you to help me. Can you give me that praise thing? Lord, I want you to help me. Help me on my journey. Help me on my way. Oh, Lord, I want you to help me. 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 Help me on my journey. Help me on my way. Lord, I want you to help me. And you might hear, a neighbor might hear somebody singing, those songs. And singing was very important to the residents of Gee's Bend. When I was a music director for Gee's Bend, I looked it up and I found a recording, the Sacred Songs of Gee's Bend. And the first half, it was a 2 CD. The first CD had the old slave songs in it. And the second CD had more of the contemporary songs in it. And man, all these songs that I'm singing tonight, you'll see them, and they're sung a cappella. I told April and them that I wanted to do this like Gee's Bend did it, no music, no recordings, no anything like that. But if you're interested, just look on there, get the 2002 recording, 2002 of the Sacred Songs of Gee's Bend, and you will hear many of the songs I'm singing tonight, plus more, and it's a 2 CD set, and it's worth having. It really, really is worth having. It's so much history in there, and I love that the CDs have liner notes. I'm still an LP person. As the kids call them, the big CDs, and where they had the liner notes. That was very important. So now that's coming back where the CDs, have liner notes in the jackets to tell you a little bit about the people and stuff like that. And that particular, the 2002 version of Gee's Bend, Sacred Songs of Gee's Bend, is really good because it has liner notes and it has a little history in there too. So, singing is very important to Residence G's band. Marilee Bendoff describes her neighbor. She'll sing on her porch, she'll sing on my porch with me. Mostly she don't sing the song, but she does the moaning. She'll do the moaning, and that's that humming. And that moaning that they would hear, and that humming, you know, they would do that, but they were constantly sewing and basting and everything when they were doing their quilts. Now, quilt making contains elements embedded in the music and art of the African American culture. Improvisational practices, which if you have gone through this gallery, all of this artwork is improv. Creating something from what we would call nothing, something they would find, and they just put all these pieces together. It turns into a wonderful sculpture or a wonderful painting. So improvisation, and that's the way it is in music. That's the way it is in our music. And when you come back on January 14th, you're gonna find out, you know, about how we're gonna make them, anyway, how we're going to show how the artwork in here is so close to music, you know, starting with the slave songs and going into blues and going into jazz. You know, all of it's improvisational practices and repetition. That comes from Africa. That element comes from Africa, the repetition, because you will find that if you listen to African drumming, somebody starts a pattern and they keep that pattern all the way through, just repetition, repetition. Their dance steps, repetition, repetition, okay? And everybody has their own, there's a drum pattern that one person would be doing, there's a different drum pattern over here, but they keep repeating it, and they put, and it gets into what they call polyrhythms, many rhythms played together at the same time. And you will find that some of this artwork, if you look at it, it's many different elements coming together at the same time to create that piece of art. Originality, it's all, the music is original, the quilting is original, the art is original. Unpredictability. You can't predict that. You cannot predict this. They couldn't even predict it themselves when they started making it, because that's what creative energy is that what creating is starting at a certain point, and then it builds on that, and then you have this finished product. Multiple patterning, just like I was talking about the rhythms in African music. There's multiple patterns in the quilt making. Broken patterns, you know, where you might start over here with one, and you might finish that pattern over here someplace else. But still, it's connected. And high effect and color contrasts. You'll find that in all of this art, in the art of the quilts. Dissonant juxtaposition. I know sometimes when you've heard contemporary jazz music or rock music or something like that, you're going, my goodness, you know, that's dissonant, which means that it's not pleasant to your ear, but there is something going on. There's something creative going on, whether it's pleasant to your ear or not. There's that juxtaposition going on, and it's all of that contemporary, you know, stuff, like I said, that we might not like, but it's still something happening there. They have motifs, little themes going throughout that they develop, like a rhythm pattern, or like a little melody, or like, you know, some of the things in these quilts. You know, you'll see patterns. You'll see patterns in there. That white strip going down there, this one, that may be constant, but look at what they're doing on the other sides with the gentleman's necktie. Asymmetry. It's not always a perfect square or a perfect rectangle. Syncopation, which means that it's not going to be ta-da like this. You're going to have dun, dun, dun. You'll see that in the painting, you'll see that in the quilting, where it's not going to be like this. Something is going to happen that causes it to be syncopated. Irregular rhythms, or basically accented. The accent, on a quilt will come over here, whereas the beginning of it comes over there, but it picks up somewhere else. Irregular or random looking borders and overall improvisation predominate the art of quilting in the Black culture, in the African American culture. And at this time, I'm going to ask you to help me, if you're comfortable, just doing some call and response, singing with me. In this song that I'm going to sing, your answer is going to be, the angels in heaven done sign my name. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I went to the river was cold. The angels in heaven done sign my name. It chilled my body, but warmed my soul. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven done sign my name. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I once was lost, but now I'm found. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven done sign my name. One of these mornings, it won't be long. The angels in heaven done sign my name. You're gonna look for me, and I'll be gone. The angels in heaven done sign my name. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven done sign my name. The angels in heaven done sign my name. The angels in heaven done sign my name. Give yourselves a hand. That was wonderful. Good job. Great. Okay, now, this is a true call and response where I'd say a line, and then your answer is, the power of God. And you can shout it out or you can sing it, okay? But your response is the power of God. Everything's moving by the power of God. Everything's moving by the power of God. Everything's moving by the power of God. Yes, everything's moving by the power of God. I rose this morning by the power of God. I got the Holy Ghost by the power of God. Now I can sing and shout by the power of God. Everything's moving like the power of God. Lord, I'm moving by the power of God. I'm moving by the power of God. I'm moving by the power of God. Everything's 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 moving by the power of God. Yes, everything's moving by the power of God. Okay, and this song I had a chance to sing. I started out in the play, G's Band, at 15 years old, you know, and then I became in my late 20s, early 30s, and then the character gets senile or Alzheimer's or dementia or something at the end, and you know, when she got older and everything like that. So, but this was one song that she remembered, you know, from when she was 15 years old. And it's one I had a chance to lead and sing, and I've been sharing it with people since. It's a wonderful song. It's called What a Time. When all God's children get together, oh, what a time. What a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. See if you can sing that with me. When all of God's children get together, oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. Goes, when the preacher and the deacon get together, oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. And back in the day, she said, when the white folks and the colored folks get together, oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. When all of God's children get together. When all of God's children get together. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. That last line. Oh, what a time, what a time, what a time. Give yourselves a hand. What a wonderful, wonderful audience you are.